Hello, I'm here with Paul Bambrick from Bambrick Studios in front of a diorama that Paul has produced recently, which he took up to the Worley show. Paul, would you like to tell us why this diorama was built and how you did it?
Yeah, no problem. This is basically done to try and encourage people to make a panoramic display and not to fill up the entire baseboard with sidings and so on, and just allow a little bit of breathing space to make a landscape and so on. So basically that's what this is designed for, is to show a certain amount of presentation and framing, individual self-contained lighting and so on, and basically like a fish tank or Punch and Judy showed, presentation, a cabinet and that, and leave a little bit of room for landscape. That's really all it's designed to do. The viaduct is made from two Wills kits, basically just kit bashed and augmented with other stone sheet, basically to form a neoclassical early railway structure. So basically it uses adapted parapets here, infills, rubble stone infills here, and effectively then ratio telegraph pole insulators instead of 3D printed balustrade. So it's a very quick kit bash basically. Fine. The buildings are kit bashed and modified Metcalfe card structures, and they're done on a distorted footprint. So essentially when you're looking at into the diorama, you see them slightly foreshortened, as then they become more foreshortened as they disappear further back into the background.
Are they different scales?
Then they are different scales then, so you'd be using a slightly larger scale, so perhaps something like 3mm scale for the foreground one, and then you would drop down to a smaller scale and so on and so on and so on as you go further back into the distance. And thus you lend a forced perspective to the scene, creating a depth that's not really there. You create the illusion of smaller objects and elements as you go further back.
And that of course is true of the trees and all of the scenery.
Absolutely, yeah. The trees, the textures and so on. Everything then follows that guideline where you're making things effectively appear to be smaller as they disappear back into the scene. Okay, the original viaduct would have been, I've proposed that would have been a single line viaduct, which would have had to be widened in later years. So you'd be talking about this side of the viaduct having been original, and engineers would have had to widen the viaduct. So you can see that there's Edwardian engineering brick on the opposite parapet. And this is something that you would see on railways from time to time, Somerset and Dorset. They found that the capacity of the line wasn't good enough with a single, so they engineered a new line across the valley, and they would have kept one side of the viaduct original and modified the other. So hence the reason why you've got a modern parapet at the back and an older one at the front.
The water effect, so how is that done, Paul?
This is done by making a separate original riverbed within the contouring of the landscape, and modelling that as a separate item and then overlaying it with a 2mm sheet of clear acrylic, so that you can then see down through the surface of the water to the riverbed below. And that's basically how this river was done.
And is that the case right the way up?
And that's the case right the way up. So basically you would then plot where the water surface would occur in the landscape, and you would then profile cut the acrylic to match the profile of where the actual surface of the water would be relative to the landscape.
It does look very effective from looking down into the river.
You do actually see when you're moving around, you can see that the surface is different to the riverbed below. It gives you, it lends a transparency to the water, And you can use various products and so on to texture the clear acrylic, but they are done on two different levels. So you see the two moving apart, you see the two moving relative to each other.
The trees in here, we've covered on a different video the actual making of the trees. Are all the trees made in the same way?
Yep, they are. They're all done on copper wire, multi-strand copper wire armatures, and so on. Basically then covered in polyfibre or chopped Chinese wig hair, and then the colour scatters are mixed individually. So basically what you're doing is you're using a very, very slightly different green summer colour for each tree, so there's no two the same. When you're mixing the scatter, you just change it every time, and that will give you a nice natural variety and a sort of natural sort of colour palette.
And does the colour change as you go back into the layout?
No, we haven't done that really. Most of them are they're about the same and so on. It's just a question of when you get to the back and when you're blending away into the distance and so on. You want to have the acrylic paints matched to match your tree scatter, so you don't see a different colour from distance to foreground.